a mission with purpose to find the missing using the power of social networking and cutting-edge technology. We're military veterans, technologists, scuba divers, and relentless seekers. From deep forests to sunken vehicles, from silence to signal, every clue matters. If you've ever felt the call to stand for something greater, this is your moment. This is the Find Me Project.
So today we have Russell, who goes by the Dyslexia Professor, and that isn't just a brand, it's a mission statement. He translates structured literacy methods, the approaches that science has proven to work, into real, actionable strategies that parents can start using tonight. Not next semester, tonight. He works at the intersection of neuroscience, education, and what I'd call stubborn hope, because he refuses to accept that these kids are stuck. Russell, I want to welcome you to the Find Me podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So, one of the new things that we'd like to do here, Russell, as we get started is as we prepare to have a guest like yourself join us on the show, we'd like to reach out to our community and let them know what the episode is going to be about. And we actually had a listener submitted question come in, and I'm hoping, if you're okay with it, see if
Sure.
you can, help us answer. All right, so this one comes from Darnell Cooper from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Darnell is a high school special education teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Darnell wrote in and said, I work with students who are already behind by the time they hit 9th grade. A lot of them have never been formally identified with dyslexia. They've just been labeled as lazy or disruptive their whole lives. My question for Russell is, what's the single biggest misconception that parents and teachers have about dyslexic kids, and how does that misconception hold them back from ever finding the help they need?
Well, let's first of all look at what dyslexia is. This is the top book in my field, Overcoming Dyslexia. This happens to be the second edition by Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale. That's dyslexia. So do you see how the back part of your brain has this massive neural activity? Now, do you see how the back part of mine has next to nothing? But the front part of my brain's about 2.5 times overactive. Okay? So what we have to do is, it's a 3-step model, is we have to take the neural activity from the back part of the brain and move it to the front part of the brain. So how we do that, and this will also lead into how you can help AI use this exact process to help find people that are missing. So we're going to kind of put it all into one general discussion. So the first thing that we're going to do is the student that we're talking about. I'm going to need to figure out, you have to pick one student that you're going to try this on. And one thing I always tell teachers is the process I'm about to tell you, they always find something that they don't like. I've been training New York State public school teachers to do this for the past 12 years at the Everyone Reading Conference. You're going to find things that you don't like about what I say, change it to meet your teaching style and who you're working with, and you'll get similar results for professional teachers. So let me just give you an example of a student who I worked with in high school. Her name was Courtney. Courtney was years and years behind, and what we needed to do is, the first thing we had to start off with is at step 1, find the student's speciality. For hers, it was Ford F-150 trucks that she was really into. But we were able to get her into a broader universal theme of, the Ford company itself. And then I just picked the biography of Ford, of the founder of the company. So you have to start off with a kid's speciality, or everything will fail. Why is that? Because dyslexics are academic specialists, not generalists. We do very badly K through college, but once we hit grad school, the first day we're top of our class, day 1. So when you're dealing with the kid's speciality, if you step outside of that, you're going to see, for most kids, they're going to lose things down to about 75 to 90% of their interest level. All right. So during the intervention period, until you get them at grade level, you're going to have to focus on the speciality. So what I do is I find a book and an audio book that gets them, that is where we want to be. So most of them, I'll give you an example. One of my students, her name was Casey. She was 10 years old, reading at the 2nd grade level. She's phenomenally interested in Theodore Roosevelt. So I assigned her The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, all 900 pages. This is about where he wants to be. This is around the 10th grade level. Casey wanted to do reading first. I usually do writing first because if you can write it, you can read it. She went to her room, shut the door for 3 hours a night, most of the days during the summer for 6 months. I worked with her for 15 minutes a week. At the end, she was reading that entire book. She jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months. That was when she was 10/11. So, this absolutely can be done. So once you're in their speciality, then the next thing you have to realize is that the biggest problem, because remember, our brains are completely opposite, is you can't ask the traditional question of starting off with something really big and then eventually go into the details. You have to start off with a small point and then go forward. Let me give you an example. If you ask a dyslexic or ADD or ADHD kid, in their speciality, do they have ideas flying around their head at light speed, but with a key question, with little to no organization? Again, do you have ideas in their specialty flying around their heads at light speed, but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So what we have to do is to force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Let me give you an example of that. Let's say this is a very standard thing you give a high school kid. What effect did Martin Luther King's famous speech, I Have a Dream speech, have on the American Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s? Your Gen Ed kids just know how to go and do that. Big picture, eventually getting to details. The dyslexic, it's like grabbing fog. We have no idea. So we have to ask a very specific question and then go out. So we would ask, what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? Then we know the kid knows how to go find that answer. We go to his biography, we find that answer. That answer leads to another question, which we answer, which leads to a question, which we answer. That forces the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Third part, the front part of the brain, which is 2.5 times overactive, deals with 2 areas: word analysis followed by articulation. So now we're going to start the dual process. I'm going to introduce you to a concept of a universal theme. I'll show him how to actually do an advanced body paragraph. And then from there, I'll show you how we can use this to help AI to help find people. Okay? So I want you to think of a movie for you. I want you to think of a movie that you know intimately, you think is one of the best ever, that everybody has seen. What's the name of that movie?
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, which one?
The original, the first.
Yep. You'd be surprised how many people pick that. Now, I'm going to ask you a very tough question. I need you to condense Jurassic Park, the movie, to a one-word universal theme that best represents it.
Prehistoric chaos. 2 words, but
nope. One word.
Chaos.
Chaos. Okay. Now, just so everybody knows, again, where we're coming from. Most of what you do is back here. But what I just asked you is the front part of the brain. Do you see how I have 2.5 times the neural activity?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're playing in my sandbox. This is where dyslexics and ADD and ADHD people have a huge advantage. So for your teacher, this is critically important. Now, you said chaos. So if we were to do a proper movie review, what we would do is we would take the universal theme of chaos and we would apply it to the top actors that you're interested. How did they do with it? How did the director do the universal theme of chaos? How did the screenwriter do? And then we'd write up our review. People would then decide if they wanted to read it or not, or see it or not. If they did, you're enhancing their experience because now they know what to look for and who to look for in general. But you didn't ruin it for them by telling them what happened. Sound familiar?
Yep.
Okay. Here's the problem. It's a broad brush. You can't get specific because the universal theme of chaos is too broad. So what we have to do, again, with the dyslexic student, and when we're trying to help AI understand somebody, is that we need something much more specific. Okay? That's a key point. Now, I'm going to traumatize your audience for a bit because we're going back to high school English and Shakespeare. So you're going to love this or hate. It's just an analogy so you can understand what we're going to do before we go on to the next step. I picked Shakespeare because for communicating in English, he's the ultimate. So I want you to think back to high school, any Shakespeare play. Do you remember how you'd have a hero? The hero would want to do something through a universal theme, and then one or more universal themes, and then there'd be an ultimate villain, which would be a person, a concept, or some combination there too, who would try to stop the hero from accomplishing their goal. They would have conflict in Act 1, really escalate to Act 2, and then it would get resolved in Act 3. Okay?
Yep.
We need to simplify that for both cases. So let's say we're talking about we're going to write a high school essay on Jurassic Park. We'd have a hero. The hero wants to do something. You'd write that out. I would have the students write that out as much as they can. And then what you would do is take for each sentence your most important word, and then you would take the most important word, then you type out the most important word, each one from each sentence. So if you have 12 sentences, you would have 12 most important words. You tell the student to type out the most important word, then go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, and then they have to type out the definition. Not copy and paste, not copy and paste. And I can hear this teacher screaming now, but my kid won't do it. And you're exactly right. They won't. If you're outside their speciality. If you're inside and you let them know that this is what it takes to learn to read, to learn to apply what we're trying to do, they will do it. And I literally bring them back to the science. I point to the front part of the brain, and I said the front part of the brain, which is 2.5 times overactive, that's your superpower. But it starts with word analysis. How can we apply word analysis without knowing exactly what the word means? You cannot. So then they type out the word, they type out the definition for all the most important words. Then you have to pick out what the best, most important word is. And that's your base universal theme, like chaos. Okay? But it's broad. How do we do it better? We go to the thesaurus, we put it in, and we look for the synonyms. You can do 5 synonyms, 10 synonyms, the whole page, the whole level, multiple levels. For each one, you type out the word and you type out the definition. Some point over the months, the kids will know exactly what the definition is because they've done it X number of times and they now know it. Okay? So then they find the word that best matches what's in their head. Okay? It's never going to be perfect, but it's much better. Now we can laser focus and find out what the ultimate villain is. Once we find out the ultimate villain, we got the hero, the universal theme, the villain. We tell the kid to put it into a basic sentence. Do you see how that's an advanced form of articulation?
Yep.
Then we go because, give me 3 really good reasons. The best ones you can. For each reason, you simplify to a universal theme. And then in the case of Jurassic Park, we'd go to the script. I would want one sentence quote that deals with that universal theme at the beginning of the script, and then one at the end. We put those 2 sentences together, and then from there, we come up with our topic sentence. Now, I want you to think back through all your time in school. Do you remember how the topic sentence and your data, quotes, statistics, whatever, the topic sentence and the data never really flowed together too well?
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of applying a warrant to a body paragraph?
I don't think so.
Anybody outside of a PhD candidate don't know this. Most people with master's degrees don't know it. It's from a book called The Craft of Research, which came out in 1995 by the University of Chicago. It sold over 1 million copies, and it teaches students how to write their doctoral dissertation and grad school. A warrant connects the topic sentence and the data by asking and answering a how and why question. Okay? So if you bring your high school kids through that, and you do 3 body paragraphs, that'll increase their writing significantly and their reading significantly. But each one has to focus on their speciality. They need their own book and their own audio book. And then what the teacher does, because in special ed you tend to be dealing with smaller group sizes, I would work with the parents to do the grunt work at home, and they can walk around kid to kid answering questions as you go. Or if a few kids are interested in the same book or same general type of book, you can put them together.
What you're describing is such a detailed process. You know, I'm curious, how long did it take you to figure all of this out?
Well, my first program I went to law school with a first grade reading and writing ability as to audit classes. It took me years. And first time I was called on in law school, I didn't respond as a student. I responded as the teacher's equal for 15 minutes. And this all flowed from that. The first thing we did is I was funded by the New York State Senate. We took a bunch of high school juniors and seniors. Now, these kids were exceptional. They're all incredibly bright, massively motivated. And in one class period a day in a school year, the Averill Park Central School District, we took them from from the middle school writing level to average range of entering graduate students in 1 year. Cost New York State this is 20 years ago, cost New York State taxpayers less than $900 a kid. We were 3x as successful as the best dyslexic college at the time, Landmark College, for less than 1% of the cost. We were under 900, they were over 100 grand.
Wow.
And that was the first one. And then this evolved from that.
That's
over
incredible.
Many iterations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's a quick thing that you can do, because as you have your kids keep typing out the word and the definitions, it takes months and months and months. But eventually they know all the words, they know the definitions, and that is the biggest thing you can do to build up their reading through writing. Okay, and then you practice those 3 body paragraphs until they got that down, and that'll give you the basis to finish up the body paragraphs with anything else you'd like to add. Then the teacher adds the thesis statement, conclusion paragraphs, and there you go.
Wow. Now, I have a couple follow-on questions that I want to get to, because, my hope is, we want to be a resource not only for missing people, but we want to be a resource for families, right? So having professionals like yourself come on our show, I think provides that value to families where they may have somebody with dyslexia, or, whether it's diagnosed or not in their family. So, I think this is going to be of tremendous value. But at the very beginning, when we were dealing with some technical issues, you were talking about how, you had a good idea how we could tie AI into this as well, with the methods that you use. Would you mind kind of just walking us through that a little bit?
Sure. So I want you to imagine, let's just pick out a case that you're familiar with. You can change the name if you want to protect identities. Name a missing persons case where people just went off to be at a place that they really liked and they couldn't be found for X amount of time. Are you familiar with one of those cases?
I am. Yep.
Change the name of the person to protect their identity. What's the made-up name?
Jane Taylor.
Jane. Okay. What is it that Jane... what are the type of places that she would like to go?
She would like to go to anywhere with water, primarily the ocean, the sound, lakes, beaches. Really just spending time around the water.
Okay. Now, do you see how you said you were putting things around the water? But remember, as we went across and we did the review for Jurassic Park, we came up with chaos. Yep. Remember how, again, that was just way too broad? Let's take that and let's switch it over for adults using things, and we can use AI. Teenagers in high school and adults that are out there in the real world, we can do things drastically differently. So the first thing I would do is I'd try to create a profile of Jane. I would get every piece of writing you could have, people that know about her. I would then go to the AI and say, okay, this is what we know about Jane. Dump everything in. What additional questions can we ask about the people closest to her so we get a better idea of what is? Come up with those questions. Send those to the people that know her best. Have them answer with AI so they can do this quickly. Take all of that and dump it into your favorite model. Currently, I would suggest ChatGPT 5.4 Thinking Extended. Okay? It makes sure it's just not thinking, it's the extended thinking, because you're going to need that. What you're then going to need to do is let's go through what we did with kind of the same process. We have Jane. What is it that Jane wants to do? Have the AI from that say, where is it that she would like to go? What are the places that she'd be the most interested in? And list those out. Okay, so assume she wants to go to those places. Then I would have the AI, based on everything it knows, write, and this is what I would tell it, in an exhaustive narrative, to the smallest detail, to thousands of words, tell me what it is that Jane wants to do. Where would she go? Why would she want to do that? Explain, write it all out. When it gets done with that, I would then go through the same general process. For each sentence, come up with, based on what she wants to do, what is the most important word. List all of the most important words. Okay? Then come up with custom definitions for each one. And then based on what she wants to do, come up with the 20 most important words and their definitions. Then I would take those 20 and I would send it back to the people who know her the best. And don't equate being a relative with knowing her best. I've noticed that some places, like I used to photograph weddings, the sister was the maid of honor, but the real person was their best friend. You want to go to the people that know them best. And then based on those 20 words, pick out which one in the order, like give me your top 3, your top 5. Put all that together and pick out which one is the best, most important word. And then literally from there, go based on the profile you came up with, go to the thesaurus. I'm sorry, forget the thesaurus. Just tell it to go and give you 100 synonyms with custom definitions. And based on her profile that it came up with, what are the 10 best ones that best represent her based on that? Something much more specific. Send it around the people who know her again, pick out the best one. From that is your universal theme, your very specific one that you can focus on. And then take all the data you have and said, using this as a lens with this specific definition, where do you think she would probably go? Give me local, give me county, give me state, give me the next few states around. And then it'll give you something very specific. And that'll probably give you your best chances of actually finding somebody.
Wow. First, I appreciate you sharing that. And, that matches up exactly with the process that you follow for dyslexia. And just hearing you describe that, right? So, we have a lot of software and programs that almost run everything for us automated. And, hearing you talk, I'm just thinking about how we could do exactly what you said, plug that into what we already do, and also layer that on top of other capabilities. So, for example, like you just mentioned, if we could go through the process you just talked about, but layer that data and information on top of a real-time map. So now we're getting geointelligence to where we can pinpoint exact locations as it relates to that specific location that missing person, vanished from. I think that would be really incredible.
Yeah, and what this will do is really help you laser focus in on just trying to use the AI much better. The problem that I find people do, let me give you an example of what my current workflow with AI is. I have found that I use ChatGPT 5.4 Extended Thinking, and I say, this is what I want to do. And then we go back and forth, but it always seems to miss it a little bit. I correct it, and then I say, okay, you're the brain, Claude Cowork, powered by Opus 4.6, is going to be the worker. Research how to write the best prompt, and then tell me exactly what we're trying to accomplish in exhaustive detail. Then write a prompt that does that, and then I have it go do the work, and then I have it edit it usually 3 times. I have to keep telling it I'm not happy with what you came up with. Why did this not get done correctly the first time? Do more research, write a better prompt, and then it does it, and then I have 3 editing modes once it says it's done. In Claude 4.6, run by Opus 4.6, where I say, what did you miss? And I run it until it gets down to 0. What should we add to make this better? And then how do we polish this up? Then I send it out. Okay, and I'm looking it over just each term just to make sure it's what I'm looking for. That way, and I do 3 of those at one time. But the upshot from that process is I'm looking over at the critical step and not letting it run wild and automated, because it's very good at doing things, but you give it a little bit of room and it'll just run wild.
Yeah.
So the humans need to be in there more than what people think. It's great. Hey, I can get my agent to run for 3 days on its own. Well, unless if you're one of the very few people that can prompt it that specifically, I don't like to let mine run for more than 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, and
for
that's
that reason.
Yeah, and that's a problem that we see as well, because what we try to do is we try to actually use machine learning. Give you a great example, Russell. If we take everything you just talked about, which I think is great, if we go and find, we start out with the base information. Just to give you a very basic example, we want to go out and find Jane Doe. We have her email address. Well, from that email address, we go and search anywhere connected to the Internet of Things. Surface web, deep web, dark web, and we find a couple things related or linked to that email. The system is then going to take that, bring it back to the beginning and refine its search and perform another search. So per couple minutes, we're searching millions upon millions of records using supercomputing capabilities. And your process you described, if you think about that, if we're able to get to a point, which we're not there yet, like you said, humans have to be in the loop, and this would be hard, with us having to be in the loop right now. But if we could get to a point where every time that piece of information comes back, if we could quantify it with your process that you described, and then have that create a separate swim lane, if you will, to where it's gathering additional information. And now we're building that big intelligence profile that we need in cases like this where, early on seconds, minutes, hours really do matter. I think that would really help.
Yeah, it's one more tool to look at, and just so you know, because I spend a half an hour to an hour a day working on AI and keeping up with it. Anthropic's Claude just came out with a new model that it's testing. It is so powerful that it found security vulnerabilities that people haven't noticed in decades. So they're giving those people a heads up and time to harden things before they release it in general. But it would probably have more of the capacities you're working on. And I know OpenAI and Google are working on something similar. So you're about to see a big jump in the next 3 to 4 months as these models get released.
No, that'll be powerful. Now, I actually want to go back real quick to our, some conversations around dyslexia. Again, I really want this episode to serve a lot of value to families and anybody listening. So, I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of exactly what dyslexia is. I know you showed the brain images, which I think was very powerful to see that, but would you mind just, sort of giving a high level overview on what is dyslexia?
Well, just to go back, just lay the foundation again. Here's the problem. The back part of your brain where you have all this massive neural activity, and I got next to nothing. All right, I want you to think back to high school. Do you remember, or school, do you remember how they tried to make you well-rounded before you specialize later on? We and this is ADD and ADHD as well, we do not want to do anything outside of our speciality. And the back part of our brain, this is where school is designed for, we have nothing going on back there. So the frustration that the schools have is 80+% of their students, if you do these two things. Remember back in your education, if you did two things. If you set up your study time properly, and then you worked really hard, you were either really successful or really, really phenomenally successful. Sound familiar?
Yep.
You didn't do one of those two things. You were just bleh. Okay? So that works for 80+% of the kids. But dyslexics, our brains are completely opposite. This is how ineffective it is. If you're in college and you're taking 5 classes and I'm taking 1 and I'm studying 12 times harder than you, I'm still going to do worse. Let me give you an example. The sport that I suck at is basketball. What sport do you suck at?
Probably basketball.
Okay. So I want you to imagine for the next 6 months, Bill Gates is paying you $1 million for this. We will get you the best basketball coach on the planet. We will get you the best basketball equipment on the planet. And we're going to have you compete against somebody who used to play Division I basketball who's your age. All right? But we're going to give them used Walmart equipment. We're going to give them shoes that are practically falling apart. Is it going to make any difference?
I don't think so.
No. We can't accommodate it because your body was not designed to be a basketball player. My brain was not designed for undergrad, for high school. When I went into grad school, remember what I said the first day in law school I was called on? I responded as the professor's equal for 15 minutes. When I had to get approval from a senior professor before I was funded by New York State, people said it was going to take years. I did it in under 2 weeks.
Wow.
In grad school, it is profoundly unfair. Let me try to give you a more specific example. It's in a book that I'm writing right now. It'll be out in a couple of months. It's called "If You Can Write, You Can Read." My part of it is a student named Reed. I met his mother. Her name was Kimberly in December 27th of 2024. Reed she just had spent $700 to have the state of Ohio test her 5 homeschooling kids. She is some college, very religious mom. 4 of her kids tested off the charts in reading. She did very well with traditional methods. Reed was doing horrible. He was 10 years old, 5th grade, reading at the 11th percentile, writing at the 4th percentile. So I worked with Kimberly for half an hour a week. She worked with Reed for 3 30-minute sessions for 90 minutes a week. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions. At the end of the school year, he had an increase, which I'm not going to tell you about because over the summer, his friends came to him and said, Reed, we want you to work with us in public school, to be with us in public school for social reasons. So in early August, he was retested in a public school. Much better data. Call it 8.5 months later. Reed increased from the 11th percentile in reading to the 64th percentile. His writing went from the 4th percentile to the 65th. His grammar went to the 97th percentile. I asked Kimberly in March of 2026 how he was doing. She said mostly A's and B's. She accomplished more in less than 9 months than the best private schools usually take 4 to 5 years to do.
Wow.
That's $75,000 a year. So what we have to do are those 3 steps that I told you. We have, during the intervention period, we have to focus on the kid's speciality. Then we have to increase, because even, remember when I told you about Casey and her book? When I took Casey out of that and gave her a book she hated, her motivation dropped 50%. And this was the most motivated kid I ever worked with. So most kids are down 75 to 90%. You have to focus on that speciality during the intervention period, which for Reed was 9 months. Schools don't want to do that. They have their certain way of cover. It's the exact opposite. That's why I tell parents it's easier for them just to handle this at home. Then we have to teach, remember what I said, from the specific to the general, and then we have to go word analysis followed by articulation. If you follow that, that's how successful Reed was. And that's just a general example. And literally, if Kimberly sent him to a private dyslexic school, the Windward School in the Upper East Side of Manhattan would have kept him for 4 to 5 years. They have a 98% success rate. They send their kids back as educated as the best private schools on the planet. But it's $75,000 a year for 4 to 5 years. That doesn't include living expenses, which in Manhattan are considerable.
Yep. And, I'm thinking about not only a private school, but I'm thinking also about a public school, right? Like I'm thinking about the public schools that are around where I live. And I mean, they're massive, right? And there's no way they have the knowledge, the skill set, the capability, or the resources to be able to do everything you just described where it's going to help that
yes, they
child.
can. Absolutely they can, because what I'm describing, you know how long it takes me to train a teacher to go from kindergarten to high school?
How long?
We can do the whole thing within 2 days.
Well, see, here's the problem, though. So, let me ask you this. Outside of them knowing about you and all of the amazing, incredible things that you're doing, the knowledge, your research, are you finding that, these schools, these public schools, without being plugged into somebody like yourself, are they successful in working with kids with...
I'll give you an example of how bad this is. In New York State, and just so everybody, what state are you from?
North Carolina.
North Carolina, okay. We are the highest tax state in the country. Sorry, California, we beat you. We spend more per kid than anybody. We had, his name is Senator Senator Hoylman Segal. He's the chair of our Judiciary Committee. He's a Harvard grad and a Rhodes Scholar from Oxford. Found out his fourth grade daughter was dyslexic. He spent $8,000 on getting her tested. His family can afford it. And they said, oh, okay, yeah, now she needs to go to one of these specialized schools that's like 75 grand a year, which his family can support, can afford. He said, this is stupid. How do we fix this? Well, if you bother to contact Yale, okay, this is really, because I'm this upset about this. If the schools would bother to contact Yale when the kids are in kindergarten, they would say, here's how you test them for dyslexia in kindergarten. It's like 40, 50 bucks a kid. The teacher can do it. Once you find that out, all you have to do is implement their research-based programs that were federally funded about $1 million a piece and follow that from kindergarten to the end of third grade. This was around when you were in elementary school. We knew about this. This is just more refined now. You do that at the end of third grade in every state. We have a reading test. If you pass that test, statistics show you're going to be generally okay. If you flunk it, it's an education emergency, because then K through 3 you learn to read, 4th and above you read to learn. So then you can either go to one of these $75,000 schools using an Orton approach, which, by the way, the Gowell School's been doing this for literally its 100th year this year, or you can do approach like I was showing you. All right, now, or they can just do the stuff from Yale at the beginning and it's cheap. So what happened in New York State is he said, this is stupid. So we passed a bill. They found the 49 top people in the state that deal with dyslexia, and they wrote a report up using traditional methods. One of the 3 teachers on that report her name was Evelyn Whitebay. She's my co-author, and her example, she took a student, she's a master teacher, he went up 6.6 grade levels in like 4 or 5 months. Okay, so that's how powerful it is from a master teacher. What they found when they did this, and anybody can find the report, it's New York State. If you go to Dyslexia Task Force report, New York State Education Department, you can just find it. It comes right up. That report wanted us to hire like 18,000 new teachers, and we can't afford that, even though we're the highest spending state in the country. So the process that I just told you, I've had, ninth grade AP English students teach this stuff.
Yeah.
All right. It can be done. You can do this. I recommend teachers work with the students in a set class and then have the parents do the homework at night. They can get through this. Otherwise, it's just so outrageously expensive. Now, what we did, I want you to imagine Reed in school. In New York State, we spend about an extra $20,000 a year. Imagine we now mainstream the kid, and that $20,000 goes down to like $5,000, saving 15 grand a year for grade 6 through 12. We're talking billions of dollars. Yep. It's not that they can't afford to do it. They can't afford not to do it, but because it goes against exactly the opposite of how their typical kids learn, they don't want to do it.
So how do we change that?
I'll tell you, you know how bad this is? Just so everybody knows. A federal judge is appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the New York State Senate. I have seen repeated cases where they've asked the school district, did you do essentially the Yale thing? No. You are grossly negligent. Not negligent, grossly negligent. It's like a surgeon leaving an instrument this long in your stomach. So incredibly stupid. All right. And parents sue them. Then not only do they have to pay for the $75,000 a year school, they now also have to pay the attorney's fees that can go $500,000. I've seen it where it's over $1 million, and the schools just have to pay it. They just won't. How do we get it to change? I'm the #1 guest on Podmatch for months. I've done over 230 podcasts in the last year. That's so I'm trying to get the word out. It's frustrating.
So, something I'm curious about, there's so much red tape in everything, especially with anything in the public domain, public schools, for example. Mm-hmm. When you work with schools or government agencies, let's just say schools, for sake of simplicity, do you see a lot of pushback, or do you see them actually taking what you're telling them and adopting it, without any pushback? Well,
let me give you an example. I presented at the New Jersey at the Learning Disability Association, New Jersey, and there was a teacher who said, "Oh, this is great." Just from what I taught her in less than an hour, she went back and she said she had a student that she worked with an hour a week It's an hour at a time, 3 times a week. And she said we started using YouTube videos. She said it was going to take about 18 months to get him to grade level, and she was happy with that progress. She was allowed to work pretty much independently, but typically what happens is the teachers freaking love it. Then it gets up to the administration. The administration's like, well, we are the higher beings, the BOCES, the state education department, federal education, whatever, says we have to get through all of this, and we have to do it generally this way, and what you're doing is inconveniently not out of the way. And what I hate to tell them is you have to go through this intervention period. Mine is just a heck of a lot more efficient, but it still takes time. Or if the parents get angry enough, they can do the federal lawsuit thing, and you got to pay their attorney, and then you got to ship them off to a private school for, 4 to 5 years.
All right, everyone. If you enjoyed listening to Russell and would like a free guide that describes the 3 reasons a child's dyslexic education isn't working and what to do about it, check out the link in the show notes. As always, thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Russell.